Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Week 21 preview. Normally we put this out earlier, but it was my friend's 30th birthday yesterday, and I was just not in a good spot.
He and you are idiots. Is basically what happened.
We are both idiots. There was a lot of White Claw. That's all I'm going to say.
Which is why you're idiots.
Which is why we're idiots, and so that's why this is a little bit late. So yeah, if you are disappointed that this is not on time, that's why. At least there's a reason.
I'm more disappointed about the White Claws.
I know. I mean, the worst part, the thing is, too, though, if we're going to be honest, it wasn't even just White Claws. The only thing at this party was vodka and White Claws. Like Kirkland vodka. Kirkland brand.
Most Costco. California party I've ever heard of.
It was, It was a good time, but it definitely kicked my butt, so...
I heard Bandit stole the show.
Bandit absolutely stole the show. I took Bandit to the party. It was a dog-friendly party, which was cool, and everyone, of course, loved him. He's like sat by me the entire time, pretty much.
This is kind of weird. This is the first time in a while anyway, that we've sent our scripts out early, as we knew this episode was going to be a little bit late. And there's at least one person currently viewing my script as I am like referencing it. So this feels kind of weird. I don't know why, but it's like I'm watching somebody else watch what I'm also looking at.
Yeah, it's weird. We haven't done this in a while where like people can follow along on the script while we record. Kind of makes it seem like everyone knows what I'm going to say. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Well, they do.
You're right. They literally do. Okay, so let's jump into the episode. Let's start with the week review. And I have only one. You have two. So I'm going to let you tackle your first one here on the week review.
My first one is it's not even a review. This isn't a review of the week. It's more of a projection. It's a review of the season. I assume if you're still listening to us, you're either playoff bound or likely to make the playoffs or something. If you're not already there. In my leagues, I've only got one league that is still currently in the regular season. All of my other, I have 10 total leagues. 9 of them are in playoffs or starting playoffs at this point. So I assume most standard Yahoo leagues, I think, probably start playoffs next week or maybe even the week after. But I would recommend to commissioners that you start this season's playoffs should have started this week for quarters or earlier if you have multi-week weeks or whatever you call them, periods. Once you get into the last 2 weeks of the season, especially the last week of the season, it's just too random. You can't count on your goalies. You definitely can't count on your players because people just get rando benched to make sure they're healthy for the playoffs. It gets too confusing. So in my opinion, you want to end about 2 weeks early, just to make sure that, this being fantasy hockey, you're able to play the players that you're expecting to, do what they do. And I think you need to be at least 2 weeks out to be able to, ensure that. So with that in mind, congrats, hopefully. You're probably at least in the playoffs or close to it. And now is the time when you really need to be thinking about the future. At this point, everything that's come up to now no longer matters at all. It doesn't matter what unless you're in Roto, but I'm talking about head-to-head leagues. Doesn't matter if you were in last place and you snuck into the playoffs. Doesn't matter if you're in first. It all kind of resets now. And I know this is a common term in real sports, but it's the same thing in fantasy. This is the time when you need to make sure that any recent changes, especially trades you've made, haven't messed with your team composition. And what I mean by that is if you're in a Cats league, for example, if you're used to winning hits, blocks, and penalty minutes or something in a full bangers league, make sure that you still have those on lock. If you've made some trades and you've gone closer to the point side, you need to make sure that your matchups are still in a good position for you. This is kind of a vague thing. This is going to vary a lot league by league about how you actually structure this, but you need to look at, if you know who your opponent is, you need to make sure that you have an edge somewhere. And if you don't, then you need to make sure that your team is in a place where if you're punting a category, you're still punting it. For example, in my league, in our main league, I found out pretty early on that power play points are just not going to be my thing, which is unusual. Power play points are usually I'm near the top because I find them pretty valuable, as usually a power play point means also a goal or an assist and usually a shot, or at least sometimes a shot. So I knew that I wasn't going to have power play points, so I just kind of gave up on it. And I think that was the right approach. And actually, I made a trade that maybe I shouldn't have involving Barkov, who gets me power play points that I probably don't need. So yeah, just this is the time, especially if you have a bye week, to kind of audit your team. Make sure that the categories that got you into the playoffs are still your best categories, and that you can beat other teams in the playoffs in those categories. And do any ad drop waiver stuff, short term ads to kind of booster that. There's no point in killing somebody 10-0 anymore, because it's not going to bring you up the rankings any higher. If you can beat somebody 5-4-1 or something in a 10 category league, that's just as good as a 10-0. So yeah, now's the time when you really want to make sure you have what will win you a league locked down, and then you're not leaving things to chance as best you can.
Yeah, that's all.
Playoffs, people.
That's all very, very good advice. I mean, we talk about that, at the beginning of the season as well, when we're talking about roster composition and just knowing where your team is at and kind of tracking that. And this is when that becomes super valuable, like you said. Like right now is when you got to know your team inside and out, know what you miss normally. Also, on top of that, like take a look at what the other team has. Take a look at their past few weeks. I always like to take a look at also what type of players they pick up. Normally, a lot of teams will kind of pick up in the same area. So it's like, okay, which category do they tend to chase a little bit? Different people choose different ones. So you can kind of get a bit of info on your opponent as well by doing that.
Yeah.
So
in points leagues, it's different. Like there's not a whole lot of nuance to points leagues. You just want the best player. But in a Cats league, I feel like a lot of GMs don't think about who they're picking up, and they just pick up who the best player available is. And the best player available is not necessarily the best player for your team. If you get let's say like a Jaden Schwartz type is available, which, in most leagues he probably won't be, but he is a points player. He gets, okay shots and some hits, but for the most part, he's a points player. And if your team is either great in points and doesn't need them, or is essentially punting assists or something like that, then picking up Schwartz actually might work to your detriment, where you'll just even more crush assists, but actually wind up losing other categories that you could have streamed in for. So this is the type of thing you need to be paying attention to in particular, especially when it comes to your matchups, where you actually match up against another particular opponent.
Yep, exactly. Cats leagues just require way more strategy in that regard, and thinking about it less in terms
especially in the playoffs.
Especially in playoffs, it all comes down to the strategy. Because like you're saying, I think the most important thing to remember anytime you're in the playoffs for a Cats league is you don't need to win by 10. You just need one.
Yep.
That's it. And I've won many a playoff matchup by 5-4. And that's fine with me. I don't mind if that's how I win. Normally, I feel like most Cats leagues, playoffs, matchups, at least in our main league, always do end up pretty close because everyone's kind of chasing the same categories. And everyone kind of specializes in theirs, right? Like if I were playing Brandon, I know he wouldn't chase power play points against me because I have the most power play points in the league. But I know I wouldn't be chasing, let's say, blocks against him because he's a beast at blocks, like that kind of thing. So it ends up being you choose your battles, and that's really what it all comes down to. Speaking of choosing battles, my first thing that I wanted to review here was the New York Rangers and their decision to not sell at the deadline.
The Rangers are going to be the end of your life someday.
Huh?
The Rangers are going to be the end of your life.
Oh,
someday.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's just a brutal... I can't believe they didn't sell. I don't see how they thought they'd compete in this kind of environment, as the Metro is crazy competitive right now. I feel like they've handled the Hang thing so weird. I mean, he played against Philadelphia, had been cold. They throw him in against a red-hot team. Barely played defense in front of him. I say barely because they tried, but sucked at it. And Hank, to his credit, didn't play that well. Honestly, he was terrible, but he hadn't played in a month. I don't know. Everything about the Rangers is just weird. I'm shocked that they were not sellers at the deadline, and I feel more confident now in saying, like, I can't believe the prices were ridiculous. I'm just curious. I hope we find out eventually what the actual asking price for Kreider was, because I have a feeling that they asked for too much in a buyer's market and kind of screwed themselves out of getting anything. And then he decided, oh, you know what? I'll take 6.5 instead of, go out and try to get 7.5 or 7. Yep. So anyways, not great. But I will say this, though. Even though the Rangers are skinny, they're one of my favorites from a value perspective. I love how much value is on the team. Georgiev, Shesterkin maybe coming back soon. Pavel Buchnevich is a good one. They have a great schedule in the playoffs. There's a lot of value to be had on the
Even
Rangers.
Kreider is not considered out for the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, and then there's
there actually are a handful of injured players that originally you would have considered to be out for season that seemed like they'll be back earlier on.
Yeah,
including 2 for the Rangers, one being Kreider and the other being Shesterkin.
Yeah, and then you have Brendan Lemieux as well if you need peripherals. There's a lot of good value on the Rangers.
Yep. All right, my last bit here. This isn't really a week review. This is more of a kind of regular season of fantasy look back. I don't know. I swear this seems to come up to an extent every single season, but this season seemed in particular strange with the injuries. Especially we're going to go through the injury report here in a minute, but as we've come down the stretch here, it's not just players getting injured. It's like the best players getting injured. It's been really strange. It seems like anybody that has been on a hot streak or is, a top 3 round player has been hurt for an extended time this season. I don't know what's been going on, but nobody's been safe, it seems like. Even Mark Stone, who for a long time was actually healthy for a while, and now we got him hurt as well. Why not? Just add him to the list.
Week to week, too. Not even like a small injury. Nope, just probably not coming back.
Yep.
Makes me so sad.
I traded him, so.
Yeah, I know. Lucky you, of course.
Kind of happy about that, I guess.
I wonder why.
Man, I just looked up his stats. He's had a weird little while here. No points, then 4 points. No points, then 2 points. 2 games of no points, then 4 points again. 2 games of no points, and then 5 points. It's just all of his points came in 1 game at a time.
That is weird.
That's like the opposite of consistent. But anyway, okay. Speaking of injuries, I'm just going to dig right into the injury report, which I'm sure everybody's terrified of or already know because it has ruined your team for the playoffs, as it has for all of us, I think. First off, Victor Olofsson. Why not start there? One of the Calder candidates for sure. Although it's got to be one of the Hughes or Makar at this point, right? But anyway, Olofsson day-to-day with a leg injury. We don't really know what's going on. The little bit I have heard is that it seems like it has to do with his right knee, which is anytime I hear knee, I'm like, oh God. Like that's either something that he's going to be back from in a game or something he's not going to come back from for the season. So yeah, that's rough. By the time you listen to this episode, we'll probably know because I said they're supposed to update at the end of Sunday, and we're recording this Sunday evening. So any moment now, we'll probably get an update as far as what Olofsson's status is, but that's where we are now. Next up, we've got Andrei Burakovsky day-to-day with a lower body injury. Burakovsky was one of our favorite targets as it looked like he was going to be playing top line, top power play. Although last time he did play, he played top line, second power play. So who knows? I still like him if he's going to get a good deployment, but it's hard to project at this point. Next up, Elvis Merzlikins, day-to-day with an upper body injury. Yep. He played really well, and then he played really badly, and then he just died, which I guess is the natural state of things. Kyler Yamamoto is next, day-to-day with a lower body injury. We thought originally that it was week to week. We thought originally that he was out for the season because too many weeks. Essentially, 4 to 6 was the original time frame I heard. Then it became week to week. Then it became 2 to 3 weeks. Then it became maybe he starts Saturday, but he doesn't. And now he's questionable for Monday. So we'll see. Yamamoto's status, if you have him or are looking at him, is a little bit up in the air in general, as we kind of assumed that he might take that top power play slot from Chase on, but he didn't. So without that top power play slot, he actually loses quite a bit of value, but considering the Edmonton schedule for the playoffs, he still has some value. Next up here, Jonathan Drouin, day-to-day with ankle injury. The only reason I even put him on here is because I feel like he was a name that kept coming up about should I pick this player up. I assume at this point, given the bad season and the injuries, that you're not worried about him anymore, but he's on the list anyway. Chris Kreider is week to week with a broken foot, although he's being for some reason considered in every game, or at least ruled out game by game, which makes no sense if he's got a broken foot, but maybe he'll be back in a couple of weeks. Who knows? I feel like when you break your feet, it should be longer than a couple of weeks, but I mean, I broke a pinky toe and I was out of commission for 6 weeks. So I don't really know what to expect. I guess it varies. How bad is the break? Next up, Igor Shesterkin is week to week with a broken rib. Same deal as Kreider. We don't really know, although he seems to be even closer than Kreider at this point. He's been taking practices. It was a non-displaced rib, meaning it was still in place. It was still where it should be. So that is easier to recover from. I can't imagine it feels real good to take a shot there. So we'll see if he actually gets any games in or if what happens, but ahead of schedule to say the least. Anthony Duclair is next, day-to-day with an ankle injury. We've got Steven Stamkos. Steven Stamkos, scammed you out of your first-round pick, out with a core muscle surgery, and he's done for fantasy and probably a chunk of the real playoffs. He had a lingering lower body issue. Anytime I hear lingering and they're actually bringing it to the public attention, that makes me think bad things. And sure enough, surgery was needed. And they didn't want to do that considering how close to the playoffs they were. He may have been able to play through it if they were like a fringe team, but maybe they just felt like it was better off that they chance it for the first playoff round or round and a half in hopes that Stamkos makes a full recovery and is 100% to be able to play, but we'll see. Jake Muzzin is week to week with a hand injury. We've got Jacob Markstrom week to week with a lower body injury. Mark Stone is now week to week with lower body injury. Patrick Laine is day to day with lower body injury, although he seems a little bit ahead of these other guys I just mentioned. Josh Morrissey is day to day with an upper body injury. And that's it for the outgoing, but man, are those some serious names. As far as coming back, we've got Blake Coleman returning from the birth of a child. We've got his first, by the way. We've got Mark Giordano returning, who is playing second power play, but it seems like he played top power play in this most recent game on Sunday, and he has 3 assists in that game. So that's good news. Andre Kasha returned, and you shouldn't care, but you probably do. Philip Hronek cared, and you probably should care, but likely don't. Logan Couture returned, and then we've also got Thomas Chabot returning. And that's it. That is the injury report.
That's a lot of players.
It's a lot of players. There's only, 6 returning and something like 12 or 15 going out. It's not good.
Yeah, the names on that list, too, are just ridiculous.
Yeah, massive. They're like, oh, I drafted that guy 10th overall. Oh, I drafted that guy 15th overall. Oh, I drafted that guy. Yeah.
Just hurts.
It's not good.
Just hurts. Honestly.
Painful.
Yeah. Pure pain. Okay. And now we move into the drop candidates for the week. So I have my first one here, which is Tyler Ennis, left wing, right wing, 21% owned. The thing with Ennis is the minutes just aren't really there. He's not on the power play at all. Neither is Athanasiou, which is interesting. But Ennis is my drop before. What was more interesting to me last game was that, and this is just kind of something to watch for, but they actually moved Athanasiou off of McDavid's line and put Archibald instead at one point, and Ennis was the one who stuck with McDavid. So I don't know if that's going to be a theme or if they were just trying something. Maybe Athanasiou wasn't feeling great. I don't know, but
he did come back from an injury, so maybe they were kind of easing him.
Maybe. I thought about the easing thing, and I was like, I don't know if you ease him like that. I don't know. So 18% of the game was Ennis, McDavid, and what's his name? Athanasiou. And then another, I think, like 10% or something like that was Archibald, McDavid, Ennis. So it seems like a little bit more than just like trying that line. Seems like that line got enough time to at least be relevant. So that's one thing to watch. But either way, Ennis, just not worth the hold in my opinion right now, especially if you're going to be in the playoffs right now. I know Edmonton has 4 games this week, but even then, I mean, just because someone has 4 games doesn't always mean they're necessarily the best option. And especially this week, there's so many good options to stream from, so many bad teams that have good schedules that it's probably worth moving on from Ennis and trying to pick up somebody else. I mean, this obviously means he's now going to go off this week, but that's how life goes.
My first one is Steven Stamkos.
Obviously. Yep.
I feel like he is a player that people might wonder if I should try to hang on to. Just, maybe. No. He had a completed surgery. He's not coming back for fantasy season. You can safely let him go. He's 88% owned, so I get that it might take a little bit of time to react to the news. But like I guess you could stash him, but there's really no point.
Nah,
he's not going to be coming back.
The timetable they gave for him was that he would miss the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, like they say mid to late April, which is going to be far enough gone. There's absolutely zero reason for them to put him back in the regular season, even if he's ready.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So for fantasy, he's done.
Yeah, especially because it was lingering. They're going to want to take their time on this one and make sure he's okay.
Yeah, and they've got nothing to gain by putting him in at this point.
Exactly. Okay, my next one here is Vincent Trocheck, center, 54% owned. I just don't see it happening on Carolina.
Nope.
It's just not. It's like I said on the show before, with the trade deadline show, I said pretty much if Trocheck was worth it to you on Florida, he's worth it to you on Carolina. The thing is, I think he's actually gotten worse and will get worse on Carolina. His minutes still are the same. His shots have gone down a little bit. It's too early, really, to tell. But for the most part, I'd say that the upside for Vincent Trocheck in Carolina is so low. There's just no reason holding on, especially as a center. There's so many other centers out there. Vincent Trocheck, if he had maybe center right wing or dual eligible, then maybe. But as single eligible as center, nah, not worth holding.
I'm still baffled by that trade in general, but that's an aside. I also have him on my list. The thing that made me excited about him moving to Carolina, beyond the fact that their power play isn't exactly locked in stone, was Carolina's pretty positive playoff schedule. But he's also on my drop candidates list. There's just not enough going on for him. Which means my last one here is Devin Dubnyk, who is still 40% owned. Stalock is the guy. Stalock is about to start his 4th straight game. Dubnyk is the backup now. And he's an older backup. So, yeah, I think you can pretty much call it for him this season. I feel like this is similar to the Saros-Rene situation. Although Rene is much higher owned and is also a drop candidate, by the way. I did not list him because I think he's been listed in the last couple of weeks. But you should be considering, just because they're a proven asset, they are not guaranteed. And both of them have been healthy enough for long enough now to know that they are not the guy for either of their teams at this point.
Especially Rene.
Yeah. But also Dubnyk.
And Dubnyk too, for sure. But Rene as well is a big one. Okay, my last one here is going to be Alexander Radulov. Left wing, right wing, 75% owned. Not worth it anymore. The minutes are gone. The shots are gone. There's not Dallas.
Fourth line, him and Pavs.
Yep. 4th line. Not getting anything. Dallas is not a high-scoring team, so there's not a lot of goals to go around for a guy on a 4th line like Alexander Radulov. And, the only reason to hold him before was the peripherals. We've talked about this before, but especially going into the playoffs here, a guy like him is just not worth holding anymore.
Yep. All right. How to move us into more positive information here, into the long-term targets, which, of course, are getting short-term in themselves. In fact, long-term targets is probably going to go away fairly soon, and short-term will just be expanded a bit.
We'll just put
because
more
really at this
point,
point, long-term, even long-term for now, we're talking about a month, which is about, it's not exactly long-term anymore. But we'll give it to you this week. My first one here is Corey Crawford.
Ooh.
Quietly having a very good 2020, essentially. He's only 41% owned, despite the fact that he's been very, very good over his last few starts. He had that one bad six goal against game, but beyond that, you're looking at 9-2-0 and above for a good minute now. He's been very solid. And no more Leonard means that there's no risk of a timeshare or anything like that. It's Crawford's net. Now, of course, it's not exactly that the Blackhawks are playing for anything, but Crawford is playing for himself at this point. He's obviously had some struggles with injuries over the last few seasons. It'll be good just for him to be able to get a little bit of confidence back, and he's been playing quite well and quite confidently for a while now.
Yeah, and I mean, Subban is nothing to be afraid of behind him.
No.
I wouldn't be afraid of that.
Funny aside, it seems like Vegas beat writers are still super weird and salty about Subban. It's I don't know.
People just like Subban.
I don't want to name names, but there's a lot of apologetic verbiage around Subban's tenure in Vegas, and it's he's just not that good.
He's not.
He just is not that good.
He's 26 too. It's if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of them gave crap to Leonard for letting in an early goal that was kind of suspect, and then Leonard went on to have a 9-4-1 in the game. It's just
slow your roll. Let him play goal. Yeah. Leonard is such a huge upgrade. If people don't see that, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, my next one, or my first one here for long-term targets is going to be Nikita Gusev, left wing, right wing, 19% owned. Getting a lot of minutes. He's up into the 20 minutes range. He's shooting a lot. The Devils have also been clicking quite a bit recently. So Gusev to me is an interesting target who you could just stream for a little bit and then drop if you need to. He had a gig. He's on a what streak now? I'm doing the math here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 game point streak now. In the last 4 games, he hasn't shot less than 3 times. So he's been on a little bit of a quiet tear here. And he was playing in the 13-15 mark, but last game against LA, he played 19. So there's a chance that maybe he's going to start to see more minutes here. But regardless, he's on a hot streak, and it's worth holding on to right now. And as a long-term target, I think he could be potential long-term. I definitely going to give him a short leash. Again, this is one of those things where a long-term target isn't really a long-term target right now. There's not much long-term. But to me right now, I'm looking at Gusev as someone that is beyond, like to me, short-term right now is someone that I would pick up for maybe 2 games and stream and use in and out as needed. Long-term is someone who could potentially be held for 2 weeks or more.
Yeah. All right. My next one here is actually Kyler Yamamoto. Left wing, right wing, 28%. Athanasiou is at 49%. Now, I get that, Yamamoto is expected to be out rest of the season. This isn't exactly the idea of grab him immediately, but he should be heavily monitored. There's a decent chance, I still think there's a decent chance that he does take that top power play spot. And with Edmonton's great playoff schedule, he's worth the risk playing with Draisaitl and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in a line that's been connecting even when they're not on the power play. 28%, he's dropped off quite a bit from where he was when he was healthy. So keep an eye on him. He's questionable for Monday as we stand now. So the upside we already know, and the potential of him actually playing is there.
Yeah. And should mention that even now that Draisaitl line is the one that's getting the most minutes per game. So he should go back and immediately start seeing a lot of minutes at 5-on-5 at least. And that line is crushing at 5-on-5. So at least that's a pretty good line to be on if you're not getting power play.
Yep.
Okay. And my next one here is Andrew Mangiapane. I think that's how you say it.
Mangiapane.
That's how you say it. Mangiapane, left wing, right wing, 11% owned. Seeing pretty good minutes up into 16, 17, 18s. He's been playing really, really well and clicking. So I think that he's someone on Calgary that could, there's someone I like far more, but he's higher owned and I have him on short-term targets. You probably know exactly who I'm talking about. But I like him.
I actually recommended somebody not look too far into Mangiapane just because of his shooting percentage. But
yeah, the shooting percentage is a little suspect, but I do like the opportunities he's getting. He does remind me a little bit of Rana, and to me, it's more of at the beginning of the season. I would care much more about the shooting percentage, but at this point in the season, it's kind of one of those things where I'll take a short hot streak if I can get it, wherever it's coming from. And with him too, Calgary has such a great schedule this week. He's worth kind of taking a flyer on someone who could potentially keep that spot.
Yep. My next one, this is a counterpoint to Yamamoto. If for some reason, news comes out with Yamamoto, he does seem like he's going to be out longer term, Zach Kassian is my next recommendation for Cats leagues. Right wing, 17%. He has been the one taking the right wing slot that Yamamoto was filling, playing with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Zach Kassian, still doing his standard, or not, and Leon Draisaitl, still doing his standard Zach Kassian stuff. And he's never going to be a power play threat or anything, but he can get points, he can get hits, and he can get pims. So if you need those things, and Yamamoto does appear to be out longer term, Kassian is a guy you can have on your radar as well.
It's interesting that he's getting that spot. Did not expect that one.
I didn't think so. I didn't think he was going to get that spot, but here we are.
Yeah. I don't think he's, aside from when it's McDavid, Draisaitl, Kassian, I don't think he's played with Draisaitl alone.
Yeah, I don't think
which
so
is
either.
New. Okay, my last one here is going to be on the Stamkos news. It's Alex Killorn, left wing, right wing, 59% owned. He's up into the 20 minutes marks again. 20, 18 minutes, depends on kind of the game. But right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to need secondary scoring. They're going to need help from other people. So you're going to see Andre Palat have to step up, potentially Tyler Johnson, Yanni Gord, Alex Killorn, all these guys. And I think the one that should benefit the most is probably Killorn. Um, could be Palat.
Could be Palat.
Could be Palat as well.
Top line right now.
Yeah, I mean, take your gamble on which one. I like both, but I like Killorn. He's done pretty well with the season. He's mostly a points option. He doesn't shoot that much. His shooting has went up recently. I mean, we may see shooting go up a little bit just because Stamkos isn't around anymore. But I do like him quite a bit on that Tampa Bay team. And so if someone's going to step up and score, I think he could be Killorn.
My last one here is a bad ad for this coming week is not a good ad. The Kings only have 2 games, but Dustin Brown. If you haven't been paying attention to Dustin Brown lately in standard Yahoo Cats leagues, he has been a monster. Getting 20 plus minutes a game, top line, top power play. This is kind of what we were seeing at the beginning of the season with him. His shooting is crazy. His hits are crazy. And he's actually getting some points. So, I mean, at this point, like we mentioned, there is not the idea of a long-term ad is starting to go away. So if he's able to keep up with what's going on over his next couple of games, he could be really good rest of the season, which, only really encompasses like 3 more weeks after next week. So I'm keeping an eye on him. I actually picked him up in one of our leagues. I may pick him up in a couple others. He fills a lot of holes when he's playing his game. And if he's playing his game for the end of the season the way he was at the beginning of the season, I will take that all day.
Yeah, I agree. I almost put him on this list as well. I only didn't because of the schedule, but he's been playing unbelievably well recently. Reminds me a lot of... he did this last year, too, I think. That's when they started moving up to the top line. He was beast for the playoffs.
It seems like he gets like a few weeks of playing very well when he's promoted to the top line, and then he kind of like starts to settle down, and then he gets moved off that line. So this is good timing for that.
Yeah, it's perfect for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move into the week preview and talk about the schedule. Teams with 4 or more games. Well, there's only teams with 4 games. So teams with 4 games are going to be Anaheim, Chicago, Colorado, Edmonton, Minnesota, Nashville, Pittsburgh, San Jose, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Killorn. And teams with 2 games are going to be Arizona, the Florida Panthers, Los Angeles Kings, and the Winnipeg Jets. So those are the 4 teams. Sorry, 4 teams to avoid. For this week, especially, I mean, if you own Florida players, that sucks for Barkov and Huberdeau owners. If you have that stack, this is brutal. If you stack on Winnipeg, that's also going to be brutal. And then teams that play 3 or more off nights, it's going to be Colorado, who has 4, the best schedule of the week by far. Then there's Anaheim, Detroit, Vancouver, and Calgary. And from that, my first recommendation here for short-term targets is going to be Mikhail Backlund, center right wing, 42% owned. He's been unbelievable recently. Unbelievable.
I think he likes Michael. I think he goes by Michael Backlund.
Is it Michael? It's not Mikhail Backlund?
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's probably Michael Backlund. So anyways, Michael Backlund.
It's Mikhail Granlund and Michael Backlund.
Okay. He just spells it like Mikhail.
Yeah, he just, he's in America.
Okay. He can do what he wants.
Well, I guess he's not. He's in North America. We'll give him that.
Yeah, that's true. I think he's my favorite target of the week if you can grab him. I think he's the best one. At center right wing, 42% owned. Love him, and I'm trying to grab him in all the leagues I can.
Yep. My first one here is Adam Henrique, center left wing, 30%. Been good for a while now. This is probably going to be the last week to really grab a duck. The week following this, they only have 2 games, so if you have a bye this week, do not take Henrique or any other duck player. In fact, I'll name one more. In very deep leagues, we talked about this in the last episode. Sonny Milano is a decent option, left wing, 1%. He is top line, top power play at the moment. He has been clicking, but he gets garbage minutes. So he really is super volatile, even though it seems like he's probably going to be good. I assume volatility, although in a league that deep where you're looking at 1%ers, Milano's probably the best 1%er that's available. Actually, he is the best. There's no way there's any other 1%er that's more likely to succeed than Milano is at this point.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, we talked about that on the weekend preview as well when I recommended Milano. We were just talking about the 1% part, whereas if you care about that 1%, he's the best one. It's not close. My next one here, I'll stick to the Ducks, I suppose, and go Ryan Getzlaf, center 38%. Been putting the puck in the back of the net recently, up to like 17, 18-ish minutes. It seems like they're kind of splitting the Getzlaf line and the Henrique line. The Henrique line's getting more time, but I don't hate it. I like what Getzlaf has been doing recently.
Yep. I got two more here from Colorado this time. Tyson Yost, center left wing, 5%. He's been doing pretty well off that third line center position, but also top power play, which has not connected. But he's actually been filling the peripherals as well and getting good ice time. At 5%, he's a pretty good option. This is, again, actually both these next two are for deeper leagues. I would have Burakovsky over either of these guys if he's available and he's going to be healthy, which who knows. But if not, I like Yost and I like JT Compher, left wing, right wing, 2%, who is playing on that second line at the moment. They're both top power play, and they're both fairly decent options when you're getting that deep into the deck, essentially.
I actually like Vladislav Domestikov while Burakovsky's out. He's currently playing on that top line.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah. But I don't know. For some reason, I'm more worried about. I don't know why. I don't have a real reason, but I don't trust him as much for some reason.
I definitely don't either.
Maybe it's the power play. Maybe I just trust the power play, and that Colorado has a fairly easy schedule this week, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the only call out I have is Nemestikov, just because if Burakovsky's going to be out a little bit longer than day to day, he's the one who's currently getting that top spot, and that's pretty important.
He did only play like 13 minutes though, and Yost in his last game played 19.
Yeah, I know. That's why I kind of left him. That's why I left him for last, because he was just one of those that's like, I kind of like
my
it.
percentages were reversed. It was Compher at 5% and Yost at 2%.
Oh, there you go. Yost has been playing really well.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, I think I like Yost the best, and then Compher.
Yeah,
and then
he's been playing better than Compher, and he's lower owned.
Yeah, and there you go. That is the preview.
No, I got one more.
Oh, you have one more. Oh, okay.
I have one more.
We're not done with the preview.
This is a player that could very realistically, and probably should have been actually, on long-term targets, and that's Duncan Keith. We've talked about him quite a bit recently. He's 13% owned. You should look at his recent stats and wonder why he's 13% owned, because he shouldn't be. And he's playing really, really healthy minutes. He played like 27 minutes in his last game. I don't really see that cooling off, given the fact that there's not a whole lot of solid defensive options on the Blackhawks at this point, especially with the fact that, you've got some injuries on the team with Calvin DeHaan and Brent Seabrook, and with Gustafson traded away. So there's not a whole lot in his last. Okay. In his last 5 games, he played 27 minutes, 28 minutes, actually closer to 29, 27 minutes, 27 minutes, 28 minutes. And over that time span, he's been above point per game. So, with good shots and good blocks, he should be much higher than 13% owned. Much higher, actually. So, and considering the fact that the Blackhawks playoffs, the rest of their season is actually fairly reasonably decent, he's going to be a guy to own. He actually has also a power play point per game over that 5-game span as well. So somebody to pay attention to at the very least.
I don't hate it.
I love it.
Shock when you're.
And I didn't pick him up at all. I didn't pick him up, but
wish you would have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, how about you take us out of this episode? You're the one who finished it off. No. Brandon does not want to end it off. Fine, I'll end it off. There you go. That is the week preview.
We can't get weird into the playoffs. It'll mess up our chi.
Yes, because our mojo so far has been great at keeping players healthy.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't want our GMs getting injured.
That is true. Okay, so that is the week preview. Best of luck. We're getting into the nitty gritty here. We'll be doing Unsustainable again on Wednesday as normally scheduled. And other than that, thanks for listening. Good luck. Catch you next time.
Yep. Thanks for listening.